Welcome back to part 2 of the NUX Cerberus integrated multi-effects pedal and controller. In part 1 I explained how this thing would save you a lot of money, as well as the many different and versatile inputs and output options for running your guitar rig or setup. Today I'll show you some of the features of the Cerberus effects, starting with the built-in tuner and mute switch. Simply hold down the control button to activate tuner mode, which also mutes the guitar signal. Tap any foot switch on the Cerberus and immediately switch back to manual or preset mode. The control foot switch activates the reverb, modulation, bypass and boost effects, which you can select and cycle through using the small control button. I would have preferred an extra foot switch to allow me to cycle through these functions without having to use my finger to press a button. Alternatively, you can include a dual foot switch to the expression input of the Cerberus and assign 2 of the functions using the dedicated Cerberus app, but you'll have to use a USB cable and computer beforehand. Over on the left we have the delay and reverb controls. The foot switch only activates the delay, while the control switch on the right activates the reverb. Only 3 of the knobs adjust the parameters for the delay, while the 2 on the left side are actually used to control the reverb settings. There are 3 different kinds of delay and reverb to choose from, which you can select using the small switches. In the Cerberus app, you can see the pedals switching as I cycle through them in real time. The middle switches allow you to choose how you want the signal to be routed, either running in parallel, delay feeding into the reverb, or reverb fed into delay. On the Cerberus app, you get a good visual representation of what this looks like. The mod foot switch activates the chorus effects and is controlled by 3 of the knobs. The other 2 knobs on the left control parameters for the modulation effects, which is activated using the control switch. The Cerberus gives you 3 different chorus effects and 3 types of modulation effects to choose from, which you can select using the small switches. The Cerberus app also shows you the types of effects pedals being cycled through and selected in real time. The next part, which is my favorite, is the overdrive and distortion section. The drive foot switch activates the overdrive effects and is controlled by 3 knobs, and the distortion foot switch also has 3 dedicated knobs for adjusting parameters. Now here's where it gets really interesting. When the routing function is disabled, switching between the 2 will automatically deactivate the previous one, allowing you to swap independently. You can use the routing button to stack the 2 effects in 3 different ways. The first one allows you to feed the overdrive signal into the distortion effects. You'll notice both lights are now on. Another routing option is to feed the distortion signal into the overdrive. The lights at the top indicate the order of the signal path. And lastly, we can route the signals in parallel, meaning the overdrive and distortion are being separated as 2 distinguishable signals. You can activate the built-in speaker cabinet simulator, which has its own separate output straight to a DI, front of house mixer or headphones. In manual mode, you can't save or choose which cabinet to use, but if you're in preset mode and you're also using the USB and the dedicated app, you definitely can choose and assign your selected cabinets to different banks. The Cerberus simulates a Roland Jazz, Fender Deluxe, Fender Bassman, a Vox AC30, Fender Twin Reverb, a 1960 Marshall 4x12, Celestion Greenback, and a Celestion Vintage. Switching between manual and preset mode is easy by holding down the tap foot switch. From here you have 4 custom presets to choose from, and up to 32 different banks which you can cycle through up or down using the control or tap foot switch. Like I said in my last video, I love this pedal because it's so easy to use and adjust your settings. Everything is right there in front of you and there's no need to cycle through digital pages. It's visually right there in front of you, and if you plug in the Cerberus into your computer using the USB port, everything you adjust on the Cerberus pedal will be shown in the app in real time. In my part 1 video, I only showed you a handful of effects pedals that the Cerberus has, but in today's video I've done my very best to list every single type of effects you can use on the Cerberus. Now let's assume you bought every single one of these pedals individually, and the average cost of each one was around, let's say, $180. You'd be paying over $3 grand when the Cerberus does all of that for less than $500. Even if you went dirt cheap and assumed each pedal was $100, you're still paying more than what the Cerberus costs. Now, here's a couple of things that I would have liked to have seen. It would have been great to have some kind of compression or a compressor pedal to tighten up the sound. I also would have liked to have seen a dedicated foot switch that lets me cycle between the boost, reverb, modulation and bypass functions for the use of the control section. And maybe even a button or a foot switch or some kind of function that lets me cycle through the different cabinet simulator options either in manual mode or preset mode without having to use the USB for adjusting the settings. Thanks for watching Band on a Budget. Stay tuned for my part 3 video where I will do an audio demonstration of the pedal so you can hear what it sounds like. See ya!